Ojadili, a cunning trickster who thought himself wiser than everyone else. Every day, he boarded a bus and vanished into a cemetery, tricking drivers into believing he was a ghost, escaping without paying a dime. But one fateful day, the spirits he mocked decided it was time for a lesson. What happened next changed Ojadili's life forever. This is the unforgettable tale of Ojadili the Wise Fool, a story of pride, punishment, and powerful transformation. Sit back, relax, and find out what happened in this wonderful story. In the bustling town of Amaikwo, there lived a man named Ojadili. Everyone knew him, not because he was rich or kind, but because he believed he was wiser than all. His thin, wiry frame and ever-smirking lips carried a strange confidence. Ojadili was a man who lived by tricks. He would say, "Life nahu sharp pass," as if cheating people was a badge of honor. He'd sell fake herbal mixtures in bottles, promise fake jobs to young men, and lie his way out of any trouble. Yet, he never saw himself as wicked. No, to Ojadili, he was just clever. "Na smartness be this," he would say, snapping his fingers proudly. But the most ridiculous of all his tricks was what he did every morning. By 7:45 a.m., he would enter a crowded town bus heading towards Ogbanike. He'd sit at the back, silent and watchful. When the bus approached Ebube Cemetery, he would suddenly tap the driver and shout, "A beg, cemetery. I day drop here." Everyone's head would turn in shock. "Cemetery K?" the passengers would murmur. Nobody liked that place. They said spirits walked freely there during the day. As soon as the driver stopped, Ojadili would quietly alight. Instead of walking away, he'd go through the cemetery gate, not looking back. Passengers would gasp and cross themselves. Some would whisper, "Ah, that man no be human oo." In fear and panic, the driver would speed off without waiting for payment, too scared to argue with the ghost. Once the coast was clear, Ojadili would burst into laughter, hiding behind a tombstone, then sneak through the bushy back path home. "Moo people," he would laugh to himself. "Dem think say I be spirit." He did it every single day, until one day, the cemetery refused to be part of his joke. Ojadili had turned his cemetery routine into a personal theater. To him, the reactions of the passengers were more entertaining than any village drama. Each morning after sneaking out of the cemetery, he would gather his fellow street-side tricksters to narrate the day's episode. With wide gestures, he'd mimic the frightened bus conductor, and everyone would burst into laughter. "Dem no sabi say na Ojadili the Great," he'd brag, puffing out his chest. Even the small children in the neighborhood had started calling him Ghost Man, but he wore it as a crown. But not everyone found it amusing. An old woman, Mama Emeka, once warned him, "Ojadili, no day play with the land of the dead. Spirits no day laugh." He had only laughed harder. "Mama, no be spirit day talk so," he joked, making her cross herself and walk away. To Ojadili, the cemetery was just empty land, nothing more. The only ghosts he believed in were the ones he created with his act. That morning, like always, he boarded the bus. The sun was gentle, and the sky had a strange mist, but Ojadili didn't notice. "Cemetery," he shouted at the usual spot. The driver slowed down, eyes wide. The other passengers shifted nervously. Some avoided eye contact. He stepped down, calm as ever, and walked straight through the iron gates of Ebube Cemetery. The wind picked up slightly, whistling through the trees. Ojadili smirked. "Drama done end," he murmured, preparing to sneak out as usual. But as he turned to follow his usual path out, something was different. The exit was gone. The path he had followed for months was no longer there, just thick mist and tombstones that looked unfamiliar. He froze. The laughter he had planned to let out never came. For the first time in a long while, Ojadili felt something strange, fear. The cemetery was no longer playing along. Ojadili blinked several times, thinking perhaps his eyes were deceiving him. "Wouldn't be this now," he muttered, squinting at the path he thought he knew like the back of his hand. But the narrow track he used to sneak out daily had vanished. In its place were tall, unfamiliar tombstones and a thick, creeping fog that swallowed his surroundings. The air turned icy, making his skin crawl. Still, Ojadili laughed nervously and said to himself, "Maybe na harmattan breeze day blow early." He turned left, nothing but silence and rows of graves. He turned right, still nothing. Even the birds that used to chirp around the old trees were gone. There was no sound, no movement. Just the heavy fog, as if the cemetery had swallowed time itself. Ojadili's bold steps grew smaller. His smirk melted into a tight-lipped stare. "No be today I day waka this place," he whispered, more to himself than anyone else. Then, he heard it. A faint sound, like footsteps. Slow, dragging footsteps. He froze. The footsteps came again, closer this time. Crunch, crunch, crunch. It was the sound of dry leaves underfoot, but he wasn't walking. He turned around quickly. No one. Just empty graves and dancing fog. Suddenly, a low whisper cut through the silence. "Ojadili." His heart slammed against his chest. "Who dey call me?" he shouted, trying to sound bold, but his voice trembled. No answer. Just that name again, floating on the cold wind. Ojadili. This time it was clearer. Like 1,000 voices speaking at once, low and angry. He staggered backward, falling over a broken tombstone. His eyes darted everywhere. "Na prank? Abby, villagers dey play me?" But deep down, he knew, no one from the village would dare step into Ebube Cemetery after sunrise. Nobody, except him. For the first time in years, the man who tricked death now felt death watching him. Ojadili scrambled to his feet, his knees shaking as if they no longer belonged to him. The fog seemed to thicken with every breath he took, coiling around him like invisible hands. "This one Don Pass joke," he muttered under his breath, wiping the sweat from his brow even though the air was cold. He tried to run, but the cemetery had changed. Every direction he turned, there were tombstones he didn't recognize, twisted trees with leafless branches that reached out like claws, and a strange blue light floating just ahead, flickering and pulsing. Then, out of nowhere, they appeared. Figures, silent and still at first. 1, then 2, then 5, then 10. Their bodies were draped in tattered burial cloths. Some had no eyes, just dark hollow sockets. Others had cracked skulls, or mouths open in a scream that made no sound. But the one thing they all had in common was that they were all staring at Ojadili, through him, around him, into him. He screamed and turned to run, but his legs refused to move. Then one of the spirits floated closer and spoke, its voice like wind through dry leaves. "You mock the dead, for laughs?" Another one came closer. "You turned our resting place into a theater." Ojadili's mouth quivered. I no mean 'em like that. Na play. Na just small trick. Na condition make crayfish bend," he stuttered, backing away slowly. A third spirit hovered just above the ground and spoke, its voice heavier and filled with sadness. "Every soul deserves peace. Yet you brought laughter to pain, jokes to grief, lies to the land of truth." Suddenly, they all began to chant together, over and over, louder each time. You owe the dead. You owe the dead. You owe the dead. Ojadili fell to his knees, hands on his head, begging. A beg no vex. I no go do 'em again. I swear on my papa grave. But the spirits only moved closer, their cold presence wrapping around him. He had made the cemetery his stage, but now, the spirits had made him their audience. And the show had just begun. Ojadili was trembling. Sweat soaked his back despite the cold that wrapped around him like wet cloth. His teeth clattered as the spirits closed in. Then, without warning, the ground beneath him gave way. It was as if the earth had been waiting for the right moment. He screamed as he fell through darkness, spinning, dropping, tumbling through what felt like an endless tunnel of wind and whispers. When he finally hit the ground, it wasn't with a thud, it was with silence. He opened his eyes to find himself in a strange place, deep underground. The walls were made of earth and bones. Dim lights floated above like lost stars, and the air was thick with the smell of forgotten things. He stood slowly, breathing heavily. Where be this?" he muttered. His voice echoed too loudly, as if even sound feared the place. Before him stretched a narrow path lined with tombstones, but these ones bore moving images. Each one showed a story, clear as day. A young widow crying beside her husband's grave. A poor farmer burying his only child. An old mother holding the grave of a son lost to sickness. Each stone pulsed with pain. Ojadili tried to look away, but the stones turned on their own, forcing him to face them. Then he heard a voice again, softer this time, almost sorrowful. "Do you see what you mocked?" Another stone lit up, and this time, Ojadili saw himself, laughing as he entered the cemetery. Hiding, sneaking out, gloating, he dropped to his knees again. I no say e serious like this. I just wanna escape bus fare. I no say I day offend una." A spirit hovered beside him, its voice like wind over water. Knowing is not always enough. Sometimes, you must feel what others feel, to change. Suddenly, the path lit up ahead, and the ground beneath began to rumble again. Ojadili's lesson had just begun. Ojadili followed the lit path as the tombstones glowed with sadness. Every step he took seemed heavier than the last, as if the ground itself judged him. The images on the stones didn't stop. Now they showed people grieving, kneeling before fresh graves, their cries echoing through the tunnel like thunder in a bottle. He saw a little boy, no older than 7, holding flowers. "Papa, I came to greet you," the boy whispered in the vision. The father's grave had Ojadili's footprints near it, where he had walked during his usual sneaky exit. Ojadili wept. He couldn't believe his feet had touched such sacred places. All the laughter he had once felt now turned into shame. "I no get sense," he whispered. "I really no get sense." The tunnel opened into a wide chamber, and at its center was a slow-moving river. Its waters were dark, but within it were glowing faces, spirits that never found peace. They floated and stared silently at Ojadili. A guide spirit, old and wise, pointed to the water. "This is the river of regret. Step in, and feel what they felt." Ojadili hesitated but obeyed. The moment his feet touched the water, a cold pain shot through his body. Suddenly, he felt the weight of every mother who cried, every child who was buried, every husband who died too soon. Their grief poured into him like hot oil. He screamed and fell to his knees in the river. I'm sorry, I no mean to mock una pain," he cried. But the water kept flowing, teaching him what no human had ever dared show him. Soaked and broken, Ojadili was led to a large stone mirror. "Look," the spirit said. In the reflection, he saw not just himself, but every lie he'd ever told. Every time he cheated someone in a deal. Every joke at someone's pain. Every smug walk into the cemetery. All reflected clearly. I thought I'd be wise, Ojadili whispered. Wisdom without conscience is just clever wickedness, the spirit replied. Ojadili looked down in shame. I no be man. I be fool. As he walked forward, whispers began again, but this time not in anger. These were personal. One voice said, "You stepped on my mother's grave with dirty shoes." Another, "Your laugh made my sister cry again." Ojadili clutched his chest, groaning. Each word pierced his soul. He tried to shout back, but he couldn't defend himself anymore. He had no excuse. The final voice said, "We do not want revenge. We want you to understand." He wept openly, letting the truth wash him raw. He was led to a circle of ancient spirits, judges of the grave. Ojadili stood trembling. You have mocked the resting. Lied without guilt. What shall we do with you? One asked. I no deserve mercy, he said honestly. But if una fit, give me chance to correct my ways. The spirits murmured. Then the leader spoke. You shall return, but not unchanged. A mark burned into his palm, a symbol of truth and humility. With a flash of light, Ojadili awoke in the cemetery, at the same spot he had entered. The sun was high, birds chirping, and the road nearby buzzed with life. He touched his chest. He was alive, but he was no longer the same man. Gone was the smirk, the pride, the clever deceit. In their place stood a man broken, wiser, and willing to make things right. He looked at the bus stop and whispered, Today, I go pay. He walked to the roadside and boarded a bus heading into town. Cemetery, he said as usual. But when the conductor asked for his fare, Ojadili paid double. The conductor raised a brow. You no be that ghost man? Ojadili smiled gently. I was. But spirits don't teach me say ghost today cry. The passengers stared in silence as he stepped down, not into the cemetery, but onto the main road. Weeks later, Ojadili returned to the cemetery, not to trick, but to clean. He carried a broom, a hoe, and flowers. At the far end, he saw the grave of the little boy's father from the vision. It was overgrown and forgotten. He cleared it, placed flowers, and whispered, I'm sorry. Behind him, a real little boy watched silently. My papa day here, the boy said. Ojadili turned and knelt. I know. And he was a good man. Ojadili visited every family he had once cheated, returning money, helping in small ways, and telling the truth. People were shocked. Some forgave. Others were slow to trust. But he kept at it. He taught young men not to mock graves, not to chase foolish gains, and to respect the dead. He became a voice of change, the same man who once feared his own conscience. Years passed. Ojadili was older, quieter. Children in the village no longer called him Ghost Man. Now they called him Papa Wisdom. He still visited the cemetery, but now he prayed there, swept the graves, and taught others to show respect. One evening, he stood at the cemetery gate and looked back. He smiled. The spirits gave me a gift I never expected, my true self. And from that day on, Ojadili was no longer the wise fool. He was just wise. No matter how smart you think you are, deceit always has consequences. Ojadili learned too late that cheating others only brings shame and regret. True wisdom lies in honesty, humility, and change. In the end, life will always teach the wise fool a lesson, one way or another. If you have watched till this moment, please don't forget to like, comment, share and subscribe for more powerful and touching stories with lessons like this. Until next time, stay safe, stay real.